Welcome in. It is the Jake Asman Show, Sports Map Radio. We come at you live coast to coast on Sports Map Radio stations throughout the country. Tomorrow, game one of the semifinals in the NHL for the second year in a row. We have the Islanders, yes, the New York Islanders taking on the defending Stanley Cup champion, Tampa Bay Lightning. Game one, 3 o'clock Eastern time on NBC. And now joining us on our progressive guest line to talk all things Islanders and Lightning is Shannon Hogan, who covers the Islanders for MSG Network. Shannon, appreciate your time. Been such a huge fan of yours, and it's surreal for me to get a chance to talk about the team I've grown up rooting for, the New York Islanders, in the semifinals for the second year in a row. What's it been like for you covering this team up close?
Oh, Jake, thank you so much for having me on. It has been so much fun. And as you know, growing up on Long Island, this is a fan base that is not just here in New York. It really spans the metro New York area and around the country and the world. I mean, we get social posts from people in Germany and the UK that are staying up until the wee hours of the morning or taping it and getting up in the wee hours of the morning to watch the game. It has been fun. The team playing exciting hockey and great hockey and team hockey, which makes it a fun team to cheer for because it's not just one line that's getting it done for the Islanders. It's a 4-line effort, and they're getting the goaltending that they need.
Shannon, you look at this Islanders team, and a lot of people maybe look at the roster and say, "How are they winning? How are they getting this done?" You look at the talent compared to maybe Pittsburgh or the Bruins, who they just got through, and people continue to pick against the Islanders. You're around the team all the time. You know the coaching they have, led by Barry Trotz. Why do you think this team continues to gel? And this is now once again the second year in a row the Islanders are one of the Final Four teams standing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the Islanders tend to be one of those underdog type teams. Anytime you look at the polls at the beginning of the season, even the beginning of this season, after they had that run in the bubble last year, there were still a lot of doubters on the national stage. And I think it is because it's easy to look at this roster and say, okay, you've got Matt Barzal. Okay, you've got Semyon Varlamov in net. Brock Nelson's pretty good. We've seen what J.G. Pageau can do in the faceoff circle. But it's not a top line that's screaming at you like the perfection line or what they're doing, what they did with Colorado. Like, you're not seeing all of those stars on one line together. But that's a testament to what Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello have tried to build on Long Island with this team and the pieces that were there before that were drafted by Garth Snow and coached by the coaches before, and just kind of plugging and playing some other pieces to the puzzle and finding a good mix. And a lot of that has to do with more than just talent. You have to have a certain mentality. They talk about the Islanders brand of hockey and the way that they look things and how structured they are and how disciplined they are and detail oriented. That all comes from Barry Trotz, and you have to buy in. And I think it took, some guys, a couple months, but once they were all in, they've seen the success the team has had. And I think it's made other players want to be a part of it. So you've had guys that have kind of said, okay, I'll be a part of this trade. I'll go to New York. You pick up Kyle Palmieri. You pick up Travis Zajac. Last year, you end up getting J.G. Pageau and signing him. And those small pieces that might not seem like a big splash at the deadline end up being factors for this team. And you're seeing it last year in the bubble and this year. And I think that it's also a group mentality. They try to stay in the present. They don't try to get too far ahead of each other. And they know that everybody has a role. And if you play that role well, the team will have success. If you start trying to do too much or go outside of that role that you've been assigned, that's when they get in trouble.
Shannon Hogan with us here on the Jake Asman Show, talking Islanders hockey as the Islanders and the Lightning get ready to have a rematch in the semifinals starting tomorrow on NBC Game 1. Shannon, Barry Trotz, I mean, I can't say enough good things about the guy as someone who, of course, grew up, rooting for an Islanders team that has never been this far. Here they are now, second year in a row, 3 years as the coach. Every year they're in the second round. I mean, I think he's clearly the best head coach in hockey. When you look at what he's been able to do, what he's been able to get out of this team, what makes him such a great head coach? Why has he been able to maximize the talent on this roster?
I think what's interesting about Barry Trotz, and I've noticed in his 3 years with the Islanders, is his ability to connect with players and his ability to make them feel like human beings first, brothers, fathers, men, just to make them feel like people first. And then the hockey kind of comes along with it. I think he does a very good job at trying to understand who they are, what makes them tick, how they respond. And I think as an NHL coach, you're seeing someone who might have some more old school tendencies and maybe not jumping on the bandwagon with all the analytics, molding that, but also being able to communicate to the Gen Z and the millennial players. You know, those kids, I'm going to call them kids because, you know, I'm an older millennial, but those kids grew up different in hockey. And the way that they were trained and the way that they saw the game was different than what you'll see from a Johnny Boychuk or you know, a Travis Zajac, guys that are later in their careers. And so I think he's done a very good job at understanding where players are coming in at, what makes them tick, and making them feel important, but not too important. You're important to the puzzle, but you're not any more important than anybody else. And I think that's especially noticeable in a player like Matt Barzal, who grew up being, you know, the star in every team, on every team, in every league he's ever played. And then, you know, he ends up being in the NHL as that fantastic rookie year, but he wasn't really a sound defensive player. And that wasn't going to work for Barry Trotz's system. And I think in the end, while Matt Barzal's numbers might have looked like they've taken a dip, in the long run, he will become a much more elite player because of what Barry Trotz has worked on developing with him and that patience that's happened over the last couple of years.
Shannon, speaking of elite players, I mean, the goaltending the Islanders have been getting from either Ilya Sorokin in the first round against Pittsburgh and then just the performance of Semyon Varlamov in the second round against Boston, it's been sensational. And you look at this Islanders team, they're built through their defense. What have been your main takeaways just watching the Islanders play defense and specifically those two guys in the net, how they played?
I mean, you can't win without having phenomenal goaltending. You don't get to be in the Final Four. You don't get to be in the, you know, in the semifinals if you don't have an elite goaltender. And the Islanders feel really good about having two goaltenders right now in Semyon Varlamov and Ilya Sorokin that can do that. You know, Varlamov is on a different level right now, which we saw through stretches of the regular season, 7 shutouts during the regular season. And I think that Barry Trotz, while he's comfortable with both guys, he's going to ride Varley as long as Varley will take them. We've seen him make some really, really timely saves in games. And, you know, the Islanders, yeah, they've had some games where they've scored, you know, 4 or 5 goals, but that's not normal Islanders hockey. They should be able to win a game 3-2. And you can't do that if you don't have a goaltender like Semyon Varlamov, because they don't always have that kind of high-flying offense. Some games they're going to get the offense from up and down the lineup, but if they're not, they definitely need to be having Varlamov at his best. And I think he knows that about this group. And you mentioned it, the defense first mentality is part of Barry Trotz, is part of Lou Lamoriello, you know, all the way at the top of this team. And you have the top pair D with Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock. And I think that they've really attracted a lot of attention on the national stage over the last couple of years, guys that kind of fly under the radar a little bit, but they were targeted big time by Boston and by Pittsburgh because they knew they'd be up against those top lines. And they're physical and they're smart and they're willing to sacrifice the body and block some really big shots. But both of them really cerebral and smart players. And I think coupled with the overall team defense and the way that the goaltenders have played, the Islanders are in a good situation. And they're going to need to be because Tampa has a phenomenal power play. So they're going to need to do everything they can to stay out of the penalty box.
You mentioned Tampa, Shannon. Of course, the Islanders at Tampa meet for the second year in a row. Game 1 in Tampa coming up tomorrow. What are the keys for the Islanders here? How do they surprise a lot of people and find a way to win this best-of-7 series?
When it comes to playing the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think the Islanders, there's really no magic formula. I think the big key for them, though, is they need to play Islanders hockey. They need to stick to their game and not get caught up in what Tampa can do. And as I mentioned before, they have to stay out of the penalty box. All joking aside about the New York Saints, you can't take any penalties that are unnecessary against a team like Tampa because their power play is clicking at, you know, almost more than 40% in the postseason. So you do not want to do that. And you know, the Islanders have plenty of experience against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they're going to draw from a little of that, but they're mostly going to draw from what they've been able to do this postseason and try to stick to that. If they can get, you know, solid defense, great goaltending, and some offense from at least 3 of their lines, I think they're in good shape. Just a couple small things to pay attention to, Jake, right?
You're right about that. Now, I want to talk about the Islander fan base with you, Shannon, because you've been around this team a while now, and I'm sure when you first got to New York, you got to Long Island, you were told how passionate the Islander fan base was. That if the team ever turned it around, the Coliseum was going to rock like it did during the days of the dynasty in the '80s. Now that this is now the third year in a row, this team's going on a run. Second year in a row, they're going to the conference finals. You've seen the Coliseum packed to the brim during these playoff games again. What have been your thoughts just on how this Islander fan base is finally getting a chance to really celebrate their team again?
I think it's great. And I think they deserve it because they have been passionate fans. They've been generational fans from, back in the 70s when the team first burst onto the scene as an expansion team, through the cup eras, through the comments of fish sticks and the fisherman jerseys, and up until now, from the John Tavares era into the current, Barry Trotz and Matt Barzell era. And I think that they want to cheer for the team. They've always been obviously supportive, but I think there's something else at play here, Jake. And I think it has to do with the time that we're in as a country right now and as a world with the pandemic. There's something very special about feeling a sense of community in cheering for your team in that atmosphere. And so having fans at the Coliseum, it sounds louder than it normally even would, because I think people feel so grateful and excited to be there for the circumstance that we're in as a group at this pandemic. And for the people that are watching around the world, they feel a part of it too, because they have those same emotions of wanting to cheer for the team, wanting to see them succeed, and knowing that there are people that are able to be at the Coliseum. And even if you're watching in London or you're watching in Scotland or Germany or, Canada, you are kind of a part of that Isles nation. The players have mentioned how impactful it's been. Barry Trotz has mentioned how impactful it's been. I think it is a huge, huge benefit for the Islanders playing at the Coliseum. That being said, I've seen some great games at Amalie Arena, and I know that the Tampa Bay fans are also very loyal.
Shannon Hogan with us here. Finally, Shannon, looking at just your career with MSG Networks. I mean, you're part of a broadcast crew with you, Brendan Burke, Butch Goran. What's been your favorite part working with those guys? Is there any funny story that any Islander fan listening would love to hear?
Okay, first of all, Butchie is hilarious, and I have had the pleasure of watching all of these games with Butch. We're in our studios in Manhattan, and we're watching in the conference room. And he watches the game to me like a coach would watch a game. Like, I feel like, or like a player up in the press box. If somebody doesn't do something right, he's like, oh, no, the turnover, get it deep. Like, he is so passionate about it. I will say last year during the bubble playoffs, there was a fan that put out a video, and Islanders fans know it because it was trending all over social, where Butch was doing some kind of like talent competition. He's wearing bell bottoms. He's dancing like some, like 1970s disco dancing. And AJ and I were in studio. We had so much fun with it. We were doing the Butchie dance, and he was hilarious. He's such a good sport that it was like, he didn't mind if we put it on air. And then we were doing it at one point. They were putting it on the Jumbotron in the studio behind us. And we all just had such a great laugh. We're a tight-knit group. We have a lot of fun. We realize that we are not doctors and nurses and frontline workers. We're here to bring the joy of hockey to people at home. And I feel very fortunate to do that with MSG Networks and to work with our team. And since you have listeners all over the country, I will just make a small plug here, Jake. We are going to have pregame and postgame coverage on MSG Plus. And if you're not in the area, you can watch it on MSG Go before and after every game. So if you want to hear exactly what Barry Trotz is going to say or the players' reaction after the game, you're not necessarily getting all of that on a national broadcast. Find us on MSG Go, or you can find us over MSG Plus. We'd love to have you.
Check it out. I know I certainly will. Watching the pre and post from Houston. She's Shannon Hogan, once again, MSG Network's Islanders host and reporter. You can find her on Twitter at Shannon_Hogan. Shannon, been a fan of yours for such a long time. Great to finally get a chance to talk to you here about the Islanders, and let's see how they do against Tampa. I know the Coliseum is going to be rocking for games 3 and 4, and it should be a lot of fun.
It should be so much fun, Jake. So great talking to you. Hope to see you at a game. If it's not this postseason, maybe we'll see you at UBS Arena at Belmont Park next year.